Welcome to The Healthy Hustle, hosted by us. Our hope for this show is to create something we didn't have during the come up, a community that supports a balance of growth and feel good, rush and recharge. The magic is in the dichotomy. And holy smokes, did it take us a long time to figure that out. Learn from our missteps, grow with our advice, because the work doesn't have to hurt. This is The Healthy Hustle.
Hello there, and welcome to The Healthy Hustle. I'm Mandy Bowles.
And I'm Mary Beth Dodd, and we're excited today to just dive into sort of the journey of entrepreneurship in all of its craziness, its excitement, in breaking glass ceilings, and some of the struggle that you walk through, and then strategies for how to move forward in it, right?
Right. The best thing is knowing you have an obstacle and how you're going to overcome it.
Yes, I love it. Well, tell us, Mandy, let's start with you. When you started your journey as an entrepreneur, sort of what did that look like? What did you see? And how did you step into it?
That's such a great question, because I was coming out of a corporate career in the network marketing landscape, and I decided to start my entrepreneurship in network marketing. I was flipping the script and going to the other side of the business. And so, coming from the corporate side, I knew all the statistics that you might even see, all over your newsfeed, that maybe 1% are actually making money in network marketing. So I knew that. I knew the statistics, but I also knew the why. I knew the reason why that so many people would start a journey in network marketing and not actually have the success. When I was coming out of the corporate career, I started at zero to replace a six-figure income with a network marketing business. But I also knew that I needed to decide what my goal was and plan to be successful and not just try. Because so many people will try to be successful. And I feel like when you're saying you're trying, it's an immediate recipe for failure, because there's no accountability with yourself. So much of being successful is the decision. And I knew that what separated that 1% that actually is making a great income in network marketing versus the ones who will maybe try and make a little bit or nothing that's really super significant is the output and the effort and the decision and the follow through. So all those things didn't intimidate me, because I knew that if I just decided what I was going to do and had a plan that backed it up and timelines in place, then I could put forth the effort to actually make sure that I was successful. And I was able to replace a six-figure income in about 5 months.
Wow. That's incredible. I think it's cool that you figured out that little piece that so many are missing, that you have to actually put it out there and be confident in what you're going for. And I think that's a piece so many times that we miss, right? Maybe we build up enough courage to try something, but then we're not willing to go all in or be I'm going to give everything to this. Or even when somebody asks hey, what are you doing these days? We might say oh, I'm doing a little bit of this, thing on the side, versus hey, I have a huge goal for this business and a huge dream, and I'm going to put everything to it until it comes through with something, and that's exactly what you did. And the fact that you were able to replace that income and see that kind of success is a testament to it.
Well, and I think it's easy when I see entrepreneurs that I've coached over the years. It's easy to say, well, we'll see what happens, or I want to try, or this would be nice. And I think the real barrier is not wanting to set a goal because they don't want to fail. There's this, if I set a goal and I say it, then everybody's going to know if I don't hit it. So I think that's where the decision factor has to come in. You have to say, what goal am I going to achieve, and what impact is that going to make, and what's that going to do to my life? How's it going to affect my family? And then owning it. Owning it's everything. And then you have to believe you're going to hit it, because 90% of it comes from your mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And then the rest, it's so much easier to follow through and execute when you fully believe and commit to the goal.
Yeah, that's so true. I also did network marketing in part of my career, and really the beginning of, I would say, my entrepreneur journey. I had little things before that, but this was kind of the real start of it. And I remember I was going to have my first sort of presentation in my home with some friends, and I invited 8 friends to come, and 4 ended up saying they could be there that night. And so we're scrambling to get the house ready. And I remember the doorbell rings, and Chris is scooping up the boys and taking them upstairs so I can do this whole presentation thing. And I remember he was doorbell rings, he's grabbing kids. Honey, is there any way you can tell our friends they don't have to buy anything from you? And I was no, I'm not doing that. And, I had I remember those moments leading up to this where I had decided I'm going to take a risk on this. And even though I want to protect my relationships, I want to protect my reputation, like that was on my mind too. But I also knew something had to change. And I thought back to different entrepreneurial things that my dad had done. And one in particular that he took a big risk on that ended up paying for all my college and my brother's college, and just how much that changed our lives. And so, Chris takes the boys upstairs that night, and I sat with my 4 friends in our living room. And I remember telling them that vision. I remember saying, like, I saw my dad do a business kind of like this, and it paid for all my college. And I remember that little vision that was planted in me, sharing with them that night. And I'm like, look, guys, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't even know this product yet. You guys are my guinea pigs tonight. We're just going to figure this out. But what I do know is that there's amazing things that are possible when you just make that decision to be an entrepreneur. I've seen it in my life, and I'm doing it. And I remember having enough, just maybe like dumbness, I don't know, / courage to say that night. And what happened as a result of that was all 4 of those friends became a customer and said, okay, we'll support you. We'll try this product. But then over the course of the next maybe 2 months, all 4 of them ended up being a part of that business and built their own organizations and saw thousands of dollars in success, from that, and several of them for years to come, and made a decision. So it's like this one decision that I made in a moment when it was really difficult and I was scared and I knew there was a stigma around this, et cetera, ended up having a ripple effect into these other lives as well, And so looking back, I'm like, man, I'm glad I was just like dumb enough and courageous enough to like take the step,
That's huge. And I think making an impact in someone's life to know that you've affected their family budget and how they live their life on the day to day and alleviate some stress, that is priceless. And I think network marketing gives so many different opportunities, right? And like so much of it is believing what you have can make an impact with someone else. And you were sold the idea of changing your life. You were sold on the idea that you could change your life. And then that cascaded and had a ripple effect on other women. And there's been thousands that have been impacted by just that one decision. And it's led you to go on to impact thousands of other women and men, right?
Yeah.
And I think too, the believing, when you believe in something, you're not trying to take something from other people. You're trying to gift them something. And I think regardless of what someone's doing in their entrepreneurship journey, if you know what you have to offer is going to make an impact, they're going to buy it from somewhere else, or they're going to get the service from somewhere else. And knowing that you genuinely care, I think that's the differentiating factor. But then also knowing people are always going to judge us. They're always going to have an opinion on what we do. If we're doing it, if we're doing check the box like an actual job, because entrepreneurs can have that struggle. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to trade places with someone, right, we don't really care what they think. If we don't want to trade roles with someone, why should we care and give weight to their opinion? And I know I faced that in my early days of being an entrepreneur, and that was something I was prepared for. But you have that in a small town and a small community. I actually had some instances where people wanted to come at me with what I was promoting or what I was doing. And it was hard. Some of these people I'd known for years and, known their families for years. But at the end of the day, I knew in my heart of hearts that why I was doing it so my kids could have their mom home with them every day after school. And they didn't have to have the mom that was, calling from an airport and maybe didn't call that night because I was helping somebody else build their dream, So I think that was why I did it. I knew why I was doing it, and I knew that people could benefit from what I was doing, whether it be the product or the business opportunity. And I think any entrepreneur, whether they're a plumbing business, an electrician business, whatever that looks like, can they make a difference in somebody else's life? And are they trying to help? And then you don't have to worry about what other people think.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And the reality is being an entrepreneur it's hard. It's hard. It can be lonely. If somebody's listening today, they might just be thinking like, I thought I was the only one. And I think we're here in part today to say like us too, like we know how hard it can be. And guess what? That's why not everybody does it. Not everybody does it. Many people try it, but they don't always stick with it. And I think people's opinions is one of those reasons why they back down. I think consistency and having to do the same boring things sometimes over and over is another reason why people back down, but they don't have to. They don't have to do that. And so I hope somebody listening today would go, all right, I can persevere one more day. I can do one more day. I can do one more boring thing. I can stick with it. I can forget about those opinions and those things that are coming at me and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You know, you look at any successful business and you can trace it back to somebody's garage. You can trace it back to somebody's cell phone to, you know, for you sitting in your car, working from the car, like just all those things. Everyone has those moments in your entrepreneur journey. You have them and you're not alone. It's just part of that process.
Well, and doubt can creep in, right? And the security. What about security? Because that might happen at home. You might hear that from society, like, oh, well, you can guarantee a paycheck is guaranteed, but is it? Is a paycheck ever guaranteed? And I think you look left and you look right. I've been a part of a large company with restructures that didn't impact me, but I saw it impact others. And I also know that there's nothing that's secure or guaranteed in corporate America either. So at some stake, an entrepreneur can determine their own paycheck. And they don't have to worry about restructures, so they can control the narrative.
Yeah. And I think nobody cares about it as much as you do, right? About making sure that you have the paycheck that you need, that you can, you know, go after your goals and take care of your family and whatever else it is that you need to do. Like, no one is going to care about that the way that you do. So as hard as it is sometimes to stick with that, and sometimes it's tempting to go, oh, let me just go take some steady thing. But if you have a dream and a, you know, desire for something to build a business, you got to stick with it through some really, really hard stuff, because on the other side is when it becomes really worth it, you know?
True. And I think every dream and every journey into entrepreneurship starts with that, what if I could? And then all the, what if I could fail? What if I fail? What if I can't do this? I think you just have to be really locked in and laser focused and know that you're in the season for a reason. That dream was planted by purpose and by perfect design, and just go for it, because there's going to be so many lessons in that journey.
One phrase I love is, what's the best that could happen? Because so many times we go like, okay, I'm going to make this decision to do this thing, but then let me think through all the worst case scenarios so that I can be ready to meet them. And like, to a degree, as a leader, you got to do that, right? But I think there's something about what's the best that could happen, and keeping your focus on that when those days are long, when those days are hard, like thinking about those best case scenarios, you know, and the things that could come from it.
And then looking at the alternative, like, what if this doesn't work? Am I okay with what the alternative is? And for me, I know when we were going through the recovery of having recent loss of losing my son, like, I didn't want to go back on the road 3 or 4 nights a week. So that's what kept me going. I did not want the alternative. So I was staying focused through the hard.
You know, one thing when I think back about just being an entrepreneur, like, we oftentimes see a vision way before other people can see it for us, right? Enter some of the opinions and some of the doubtful things that people who really care about us and love us will say, things that they think are going to protect us and keep us safe. You know, like, okay, cute for you to go do your little business, but make sure you still have a backup plan, you know, or like just some of the comments and things that people say. But I'm just curious, Mandy, like, what are some of the ways for you that, like, maybe it was surprising how successful you are, or like maybe somebody didn't see that coming and you just, you know, blew their minds?
So I actually took my plan B and I threw it out the window. And it's funny that you asked that, because I remember declining the corporate offer and deciding I was going to build my own business instead. And within 3 or 4 days, I was like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? This would have been a really great place to work. And I thought about getting back on LinkedIn. Actually, I did. And then I'm like, stop. You cannot think that way, because if you're thinking about your plan B, your plan A will never take off. And so it's kind of like burn the bridge, you know, kind of burn that bridge, not
burn the ships.
Literally burn the ships. Right. Throw out the lifeboat. Like,
Yeah.
it's not there.
Yeah.
You're going to have to swim to the island if you need to. Right. But I think when you are planning your failure, you're going to fail. And so I think that was the thing I did. And even there was a time when that journey got difficult and I had an offer to go back into corporate. And I remember having that conversation. I remember having that conversation with the recruiter that found me through LinkedIn, and she called me. And I just, at that point, I did not I did not care. I asked the hard questions, and I thought, it would take something really for me to go and live that life again, which was, I had great lessons in the process, but it was not for the season of life that I was in. Knowing that I could make that income on my own was not happening. And I remember I got off the phone and my husband's like, why didn't you take that opportunity? I was like, because I know I can build something even bigger. I know our family's worth it. I know our son needs both parents home right now.
When you're grinding from dawn to done because your vision demands it, your body needs more than motivation. It needs real health infrastructure. That's why the Healthy Hustle is powered by Immunotec, a leader in immune health research for over 4 decades. With patented science focused on glutathione production, the body's master antioxidant, Immunotec delivers clean label, vegan-friendly support for your immune system, energy, recovery, and overall performance. So whatever your training session, pitch meeting, or creative sprint looks like, trust your body to keep pace. Because the hustle doesn't wait and your health can't either. Visit Immunotec.com and take command of your immune advantage. Immunotec, the science of living better.
So I know for me, when I started my business, I had that, few days. Do I need to get back on LinkedIn? What do I need to do? And I remember Nick at that point was like, Mandy, I believe in you, but you're scaring me.
I've heard that.
I think it was maybe 2 weeks in, and he's like, what have you done? And I was so fired up because I was like, I'm like, well, and that was motivator. That was my motivator. And I realized what I hadn't done. I had given myself every exit that I possibly could have because I hadn't gone out there and committed to being successful. I had told him and I had, declined the job. Other than that, I really hadn't talked much about it. And so for me, I was going to build the business using digital, and I had to go out there on social media and be bold and announce what I was doing and show intent to be successful and believe in myself when the world was going to think I'm crazy. And I did it. And that was the turning point for me, because once I did that, there was no turning back.
Yeah. That was burning the ships.
I burned the ships.
You did. I think, I was so cautious when I began to build my business. And maybe at the moment, it was wisdom. I don't know. I feel like I got bolder as time went on. But in the beginning, I was pretty protective about who I talked to, And I remember actually, because I was in a pretty visible role at the time. And I remember I was making probably a 6-figure salary by the time the majority of people around me knew I was doing anything. So it was kind of more of and I did a lot more in-person things, right, to grow my business. But so it made that maybe more possible than coming out on social media in a really bold and obvious way, which I did years later, and that looked different. But I think it also, for me, it was bite-sized pieces. It was okay, now I have the courage to tell this person, and now maybe this person. And it was this sort of slow progression. But what didn't change was my dedication to the work, and knowing what I wanted and going after it. And then just slowly, I kind of let that plan unfold, into what was next. And one thing I thought about is, though I started in leadership really young, I don't know that I ever knew I was going to need some of the things and the tools that I used as time went on. And so I was thinking back, and I'm the first time I read a book on leadership, I think I was 21 years old. I was in college, and I picked up my first John Maxwell leadership book. And I think back on that now, and I think it was the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership or whatever. And it was actually a class requirement. I'm so thankful, because I remember reading it and being out of everything I've studied in college, this is it. This is something I love. I'd read so much more of this. And I think that was provided tools then that I would use for years and years and years. And it gave me this sort of mantra and foundation that I think, I've said a million times now. And that is that your leadership should always be farther than your paycheck, your title, the place you are in your business. And I think that set the tone for me to go, all right, I'm not successful yet, but I see this big vision and I'm going to keep growing myself, hopefully past that ceiling, past that space, past that dollar amount that I want to earn mentally, and in my leadership and the way that I carry myself and the way that I dress and the way that I show up and the confidence that I speak out. And I think that helped to set the tone for what that would look like later down the road.
Yeah. And I think it's important to be known for that, right? Being a leader that's never willing to ask or lead someone where you wouldn't go yourself. And I think there's so much credibility a leader builds when they're like, let's do this. Let me show you. I do this and then I teach this. Regardless if you're in a corporate setting or an entrepreneur, those principles will carry you far and gain respect from everyone you lead.
Mm-hmm. One thing about being an entrepreneur is I do think there's a phase in your business where you wear all the hats, you do all the jobs, you do all the things, right? And it's just not always glamorous. And even like when you get to the place where you're at a pinnacle of your career, and you think things are going really great, there's so many times when then you're back doing the hard things, as an entrepreneur, and you feel like you're backpedaling, but in reality, it's still all going toward that same place.
Okay, so I think when somebody's starting in business, it's so important to just decide what's going to make an impact. But we also know sometimes those long-term goals seem wild and crazy. Like I like to say it's like your lottery dream, because life can really get you down and then you think those things can't happen. But I think we need to take a step back and think every time you're getting ready to embark on something, what's going to make this worth it? I say, like, think about what, if you're on a Sunday drive with your family, what is that dream that you would do if you won the lottery? If you had this amazing, wow, I have all the numbers and life has changed overnight, how would life look like? Because I think we can get stuck in the grind of life and forget to dream and think beyond what's in the bank account right now. And so I think that lottery dream kind of gives you permission to think, wow, if anything could be this picture perfect life, how would my life look? And maybe it's a dollar amount, maybe it's a house, but really just bask in that and think about the reality that it's possible and that money's there. Because we can say money doesn't drive us, but most things are driven by money. When you think about it, right? Most lifestyle, even if it's giving back, it takes money to give back.
Right.
If it's a dream home or a ranch, it takes money to do that. If it's to come home for your kids, it takes money to do that. If it's an accomplishment, is that accomplishment measured by an income goal? I want to feel successful. Well, what does that look like? So getting really clear on that and just knowing that, okay, maybe that's not going to happen. Maybe my lottery dream doesn't happen tomorrow, but what if you have $1,000 extra dollars this month? Or maybe it's, if your business is producing $1,000 or $2,000, how does that change your current script? What does that look like? How does that make an impact? And then that can become your first goal. So some people, it might be getting your nails done. Maybe it's a side hustle. That's great. Go get your nails done. But maybe it's something very real. We've got to pay for our mortgage stat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people find themselves in that place, especially if you're already an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's adding a second income stream or it's just doubling down on whatever it is you're doing. And I love that idea, Mandy, having that really big lottery goal dream that's okay, this is the huge vision that I see and the end game that I see that I'm working toward and I'm growing myself toward. But then what are the benchmarks that are going to get you there? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a 30, 60, 90 day, even, okay, this is what this looks like. And one thing that really helped me, especially early in my entrepreneur journey, was celebrating along the way. And I remember I would hit any goal and it might just be some little goal. And we'd go, all right, let's go to dinner tonight, and just find some small way to celebrate what that looked like. And then go all right, well, we hit this next threshold. So I think we went to Maggiano's for the first one with a gift card that we already had, then the next one came and it was all right, now Chris and I are just going to go out alone and we're going to go to this really great seafood restaurant, and it was we celebrated every step on the journey. And I don't even know why we knew to do that, if it was just intuitive or what, but I look back and I'm that was key. That was really key, because if we keep waiting for that big dream to come true, that's so frustrating. It takes a long time. There's a long way. If you got a big dream, a big goal, there's a long way between where you start and where that is. You know, sometimes I call it the vision gap, like that gap between where you are now and when you feel like that vision like becomes reality. And so we've got to fill that space, right, with those tasks and things that we know are important to do in our business. And, you know, a lot of times we talk about balance and we talk about like prioritizing and how do we figure all that stuff out. But the reality is you figure out what are those things that move the mark, the income producing activities, you know, the things that we have to do as an entrepreneur to get that paycheck coming in so we can keep moving forward. We got to do more of those things, you know, those activities. And it can make all the difference. Like if you want to have a coaching business. I remember somebody telling me this before I started a coaching business at one point in my career. If you want to have a coaching business, what's the one thing you need? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, you need a website, you need a curriculum to coach by, and it's like, nope, you just need one paid client. You need one person to pay you to have a coaching business, and that's all you need. So if you look at it that way, it's like there's a million steps to have a successful business, to get where you want to go. But what you really just need is a start. And those things that are actually going to get the ball rolling and get income coming in.
I think you bring a great point, because so many times people think they have to have all the facts and they have to have the perfect plan to start, when all you really need to know is, why do you want this? And is it going to make an impact? And just go, because the process of being successful is the learning from the starting point. So once you start, then you're learning those valuable lessons that you're not going to learn if you wait. Because you don't know what you don't know when you're starting on something. Like so much of it is you figure it out along the way, and then you tweak and pivot, and then you could literally be 3 months into your journey and making money. And then if you hadn't started, you'd still be thinking, gosh, like what angle do I need to take? You know, and you could have missed all that income along the way in that messy middle.
Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to just wait a little too long. And there's some investments I can think back to. There's some business opportunities I can look back on and go, why didn't I just say yes before I was ready? Because I think that's the key. And that's not just starting your business. That's all throughout growing your business. You have to make a decision when you're, what do you think? 70%, 60% sure. Sometimes it's like you're barely sure enough, and you make the decision and you take the risk. And that doesn't mean that it's easy, because guess what? Sometimes it doesn't turn out the way you want it to turn out, but it's never going to turn out the way you want to if you don't just take the risk.
Yeah, this is such a great reminder of watching my mom reinvent herself when she was 50 years old. It's one of my favorite stories, because she had been a licensed cosmetologist my whole entire childhood. Actually, when I was 6, she built an addition to the home so she could be there for me when I got off the bus. But she was finding herself not making a whole lot of money. But it was flexible. She wasn't making a whole lot of money, but it helped. But her hands, carpal tunnel, all the things just made it really clear that that wasn't going to be something that changed her situation, right, going forward. And, you know, her and my dad had some big goals. I know my dad went on the road and started driving truck when I was 18. He was a farmer, so he did that in the winters. And then she decided to reinvent herself and have a new career. And she was praying about what to do. And then I remember sitting with her at the kitchen table, and she saw a newspaper ad for an opportunity to be a licensed insurance agent. And she was probably what everybody would say would not be a good insurance agent. She was the furthest thing from a salesperson, but she cared about people, and she saw that ad and she thought, this is what I'm supposed to do. She just felt like that was what the Lord was leading her to. So she picked up the phone and called, and she enrolled herself in this, and she became a licensed insurance agent. And then she became, within, 3 or 4 years, she decided that she was going to completely go full in. But that year that she went full in, I think 13x'd her income.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
And I love that she did that after 50.
After 50.
Like, it's so tempting for us to think, I missed it. Or like, if I had just done that when I was younger or whatever. And the reality is there's no timeline on this stuff. I mean, I just read an article about a lady that was over 100 years old who is still working. And she's like, if you don't like your career, change it. And I hope that somebody takes that today. Just that, like, if you don't like what you're doing, have the courage to just say yes. What's the best that could happen? Like, what could it look like if you just say yes and you dig in the way that your mom dug in and 13x'd her income? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then more, right? It was just, and it was, she was running both businesses. She was still, doing hair. And then, but she had to make a decision. She thought, gosh, like this is what I'm making. What if I just went all in with it? And then it was sad. She closed the beauty salon that had been a part of our life forever. But to see her flourish and help so many people, and she does it for impact. Her business is referral based. She doesn't know how to do digital. And so it's just wild to think what happens when your intentions are pure and you decide you're going to do something and you go all in.
I love it. And just you say yes.
You say yes. And you can reinvent yourself at any given moment. And you can light a fire in your business at any given moment when you decide you're going to do it.
Thanks for joining us today on The Healthy Hustle. Please like, share, subscribe. If you think somebody can benefit from this, make sure you let them know. And we'd love to hear from you. We're excited to talk about topics that would impact you as an entrepreneur and as somebody who wants to continue their hustle in a healthy way.